All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming. So, just overview, introduction. My name is Shaelyn Giampetroni. I am going to be talking about the New York State Digital Game Development Tax Credit Program, as well as a couple other resources that the state has to offer. So, this is a relatively small group. I want to keep this an informal discussion, so I'm going to give a pretty brief overview, and then I want it to be sort of tailored to you all, and we'll open the floor to questions. So, to get started, this tax credit is relatively new. It launched in January of 2023, so it's less than a year old. What I'm going to talk about today is the team behind it, the team that is running it, and that you'll be interacting with if you decide to apply, a little about the industry background throughout the state, and then the tax credit and other things that we're doing, and then we'll have the Q&A. So this is the team behind it. Rhoda Glickman is the Senior VP of Film, Arts, and New Media for the entire state of New York. And then we've got Patricia Bailey and myself, who manage the applications and the industry and talking to you all and doing events like this. And then we've got Connie McFeely, the director of all entertainment tax incentives, and so she's the one who's really auditing the applications, and we'll talk about eligibility, et cetera. So in New York State, this industry has a direct output of 976.4 million in 2020. That has grown substantially since then. The data is not there for the last couple of years, but we know it's grown, especially in this region in particular, as well as upstate in Rochester. New York is the fourth in the nation for economic output. That's pretty steady. That hasn't changed since 2020. So we're looking to get it up there, and that's one of the reasons why this incentive came to be. So this program was designed to increase investment in the digital game industry and support existing investment. So we're looking at new projects, but it doesn't necessarily have to be new companies. Basically, what the tax credit is 25% back on what you spend on labor. That's if the labor is happening in New York City. If it's happening outside of the New York City commuter district, that's 35% back. Any playable project is eligible as long as 75% of the labor happens in New York State. Your company doesn't have to be based here. You don't have to be based here. 75% of the labor on the game has to be in the state. This is a lot of legal language about what is included, but to boil it down, it is labor on things like coding and programming, marketing, overhead, voice acting. Those labor costs are not eligible. Also, per person, we're going to cap the eligibility at $100,000. If somebody on this project is if you're paying somebody like a programmer $110,000, that's fine. You can still include that in the budget you submit to us, but only $100,000 will be eligible. So if we're talking about eligible costs and you're going to get 35% back, we would only calculate 35% back on that $100,000. That's per person. Overall, it's up to $4 million. So if your project budget is larger than $4 million is where we'd cap the eligible costs, and that's what you could get 35% back on. This is the application requirements. This looks like a very long list. However, if you have a game design document or you have the idea of how to draft your game design document, and you have a rough idea of your budget and who you're going to be employing, this does not take that long. A lot of these bullet points are checkboxes and quick little things, so don't get overwhelmed by the application process. These are sort of what you will need to have at hand when you sit down to apply. You can always come back to it, and you can always call our office. We are here to help. We never want somebody to feel like they're applying to this program and they're sitting in a hole or on an island isolated. Call us, email us. We are here to help. We want this to be accessible and easy for everybody to do it. So the application process, this is what's required. Also, I should note, diversity plans are required for everybody applying to this incentive program. All that is showing what your intentions are and what efforts you're going to make. If that doesn't end up happening, that's okay. We're just going to ask you to prove that you actually made an effort, right? So don't get too scared about this. Don't try to do math with percentages of how many people you're going to try to hire. It's a broad overview for your goal. You're stating your goal, and then we'll cross that bridge when we get to your final application, which brings me to applications are received on a rolling basis. There is no deadline, and they are per project. If you have a company and you're working on 5 games, you can apply 5 times. I will say they have to get your application in before programming really starts, so make sure that you get your initial application in ahead of actual game project and incurring costs on your game development. I know that can be a very blurry thing, so it's really call our office. We'll talk to you about eligibility. If you started work on a prototype, if you started trying to get investment, if you started drafting, all of that stuff is okay. If you've really started sitting down and programming and coding and this game is underway, that's when it's probably not eligible for you to apply. So make sure you get your applications in early, but they're received and reviewed on a rolling basis. And this 90 days, it's usually sooner than that. That's our buffer, but you should hear back from us pretty quickly. The final application. So you've submitted your initial application, you've gotten approved, we've said, yep, you'll receive your 35% back. You finish your game, then you submit your final application, and this is how you'll actually get your money. This is when you're saying, okay, I said I was gonna hire 3 people, I actually only hired 2, this is what I paid them, you provide us all that, we change the numbers, and we issue your tax credit. So there's 2 applications, it's the exact same form, it's just goals and actuals. And the process is really simple, and our office is always accessible and willing to walk you through it. So some of the things we've been doing to promote this tax credit and the industry as a whole. We have webinars. We did a large round of webinars before we launched the tax credit a few years ago. We're just about to start a new webinar series, so I'll tell you all how to sign up to hear about that in a few minutes. But we're focusing on topics that we think are beneficial to the industry. So if anybody is wondering about a certain aspect of this industry in New York State and you want to have us host a webinar about it, we're so open to that feedback. That's what this webinar series is for. So we want to hear all your ideas and all your feedback. We've had roundtables with the industry to try to listen about what is best needed, how this tax credit and other events that we host could be most beneficial for this industry, specifically in the state. Like I said, our body is here to listen. We are just trying to support the industry in any way that's needed. So we're always happy to have feedback, host more roundtables, trade shows. So we attend events, and that top left corner, that picture, and actually the one below it, are from GDC this past year. So New York State hosted a 1,500 square foot pavilion in the exhibitor hall at GDC, and we brought a contingency of New York-based school programs and companies and nonprofits to promote their business and show off their games that they've been working on. And so we felt like it was really successful. We did learn a lot. It was a big event, and it was our first year attending at that capacity. So we are going again this year. If anybody is interested and would like to come with us, definitely talk to me about it, because we still have room, and we would love to get a really thriving New York community there. And we had a lot of fun last year, so definitely talk to me about it. We have press and social media outreach. That's pretty standard, but we also have a newsletter that we have, and if anybody in the industry has an announcement, if you've made this really great game and you're trying to get people to play it, if you're hiring, we would love to include that in our newsletter. So we publish the newsletter quarterly. There's one that's about to come out next week, but don't be shy. Let us know if you have an announcement you'd like to spread throughout the industry, and please sign up to our newsletter. This seal, so we've developed this logo, which you might see out there on my tablecloth, and this is a means of promotion, but it's also a means of us checking our credibility with this tax credit. So assuming that the games that you are applying to this tax credit for are going to be commercialized and to market, this is required to be in your credits. That said, this tax credit is not limited to marketed or commercialized game products, so if yours is a simulation and it doesn't have credits, this just needs to be somewhere visible on your website or other promotion. So it's always, this will be attached. You'll start to see this seal, hopefully, as you start playing games and as this program grows. So this is our other thing, and I have some of those little palm cards out at our table. And this is our newsletter I just mentioned. So this, if you want to scan it, this will sign up for our newsletter as well as for our webinar series. And then you can pick if you want to stay subscribed only to one. We're very careful about, we don't want to spam your inbox. So please feel free to scan and subscribe. So that was a lot of information, and that was the very highlight overview I wanted to do, because I really want to tailor it to all of your questions. I have more. I can go into more details about any of this, but I want to see where the questions are. So I'm going to leave the rest of the time to the floor.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Sarah, and I just gave a talk about starting sole proprietorships. So my
Wonderful.
question is, are sole proprietorships eligible for this program, or is it more of a corporation sort of thing?
Yes, they are.
Yay!
Very easy answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm CJ. Thank you for the presentation.
Yes.
I'm actually going to ask I was in Sarah's talk previously. You mentioned the maximum eligible expenses are 4 million. Is there a minimum?
Yeah, the minimum is 75,000,
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, of eligible expenses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to double check it and I'll let you know, but I'm almost positive that's the minimum.
Also, shout out Empire State Development. They're the ones that made the awesome guide. So I pitched them on
What did we do?
the small business guide.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yep, that's Empire State Development.
Awesome.
Great, I'm so glad you could use it. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, I'm a solo developer, kind of doing the whole thing, at least
Yep.
so far.
Yep.
I developed a few products, looking to sell them. How would I track my hours individually? Is that even obtainable? Or, I mean, it's a side hobby. I have another personal job myself, so I'm just wondering how I do that.
Yep. That's a really great question. We've seen it done a lot of ways, so just so you know, it is possible people are doing this. We've seen people allocate in their initial application a chunk of time where they'll say it's sort of aspirational, and they'll say, well, I'm going to spend 10 hours a week on this. And that's sort of, and then on the actuals, they actually just track it. Like they have a phone app or something, they actually just track the hours that they're spending. Others are keeping themselves to a very strict schedule. So it's really up to you. But if you are doing the thing where you're like, I don't actually know how much I'm going to spend on this, and it's an aspirational goal, that's okay. You can call our office. Like, you submit your initial application. If you get approved, you can call our office and say, I'm actually spending a lot more time on this or a lot less time. We'll update the initial application just so that when you have to fill out your final application, the numbers aren't way off. But that should be fine. It's, you want it to be accurate for your purposes, just so you can know what to expect in terms of that refund that you're going to get at the end, because the math will change, right? But as far as we're concerned, if things change from the initial application, it's all right.
And what would I put for like an hourly rate? I mean, I feel
That's up to you, how much you want to pay yourself. Yeah. So, I mean, remember that this is going to be reimbursed when you file your taxes at the end of the year, and it's 35%. So you would get 35% back of whatever you pay yourself.
interesting.
Up
Okay.
to $100,000.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And when you were mentioning what is eligible, what's not, you mentioned code and coding a lot, and then specifically mentioned stuff such as, say, music or vocals as not eligible.
Yeah.
What else is eligible? It's a very multimedia discipline, so like
Yeah.
what?
So, art is eligible. Writing, some of it's eligible. This is where we get into splitting hairs with our audit team. But broadly, think of it as work specific to this game is likely eligible unless you're bringing in talent. So voice acting, not eligible. Music, not eligible. Overhead things that could be for this game, could be for another game, or just broadly for the company, like marketing or investment or communications, that stuff's not eligible. So that's the broad way to do it. If you have very specific questions about job titles that are eligible, that we can have that conversation with the audit team, and they'll be able to tell you specifically what is eligible and what isn't, and if it's, maybe that individual might even have some hours of their day are eligible and some aren't, right? So we've gotten into all of those specifics before.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So the minimum budget overall for the project is 75,000?
I think I'm almost
Okay,
positive, but I
around
want to
that.
find out. If you guys who are asking this want to stop by my table, that's where I have the actual information, and I'll double check, but I'm almost positive it is.
If even it's close to that, is that, so at the end of the year is when you get reimbursed the 35, or depending on where you are, percentage back. Is that 75 or whatever number over the course of the entire project or per year?
It's per project, yep.
Okay,
So
cool.
that's great. The timeline that we're looking at is per project. So if you think that your project's going to last 3 years, you're going to tell us that ahead of time when you submit your initial application. So it's still, when you get to hand in your tax credit, will still be with the tax calendar year. Like, you'll still do it when you're doing your taxes, but this budget and these purposes are for the project. So if your project is going to take 3 years, you would budget that ahead of time, and you would tell us the salary per year, and so it would be 35% on the whole project, no matter how many years.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yep. Yep. No, there's no limit on the number of applications you can submit per year. There is a limit on how much you can receive in tax credits in a year. So which is 1.5 million. So if you submit 3 or 5 or 10 applications in a year, that's all fine and good. It's when you start cashing in for your final applications, that's when we're going to start paying attention. And it's not even an amount of how many you cash in, it's the dollar amount. So that's when we would do math and say, okay, well, they're cashing in for more than 1.5 million. That can't be issued, so maybe they need to do that next year. That's where we have to start having those conversations. But there's no limit to how many you can apply for. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to show you all this. This is where the program page and the application lives, if anyone wants to scan this. So basically, it's a one-click application. It'll take you right to the form. You create sort of like a login, and you can come back to it at any point. And each login is per project. So if you're submitting a lot of applications, you'll do this a bunch of times. And there's also, like, our guidelines and eligibility are all written out on here. But like I said, if there are other questions, my office loves to hear, because, like, this is a brand new tax credit, and so we're still learning about the industry. I was telling somebody out there earlier, like, we structured this similarly to the only other tax credit that our office manages, which is for film and television, and they're very different projects and very different industries, right? So there's a lot of a learning curve for us, and it's very helpful to hear from all of you who are thinking about applying or want to apply, about, you know, how to make it an easier process, and the terms and things that we should be including and talking about to make it helpful for you. Great. Well, I think we're done, but I'll be out there and I'm available for questions.